Welcome everybody to the fourth episode already of Data Minds. So it's a podcast about to get to know the people behind the data analytics projects here in Belgium. I'm your host Chris Peters. I'm the CEO of Data Minded, and today I'm honored to have with me Martine George, professor at Solvay Business School. Welcome to the show. And then maybe as an introduction, I think it's best that you can introduce yourself to the viewers. So what is your background, who are you, and what do you do?
So my name is Martine George. I teach at Solvay Data Science. I have been involved in analytics since a long time. I would say since the end of the 90s.
Wow.
And I have, as a background, a PhD in physics, where I did some speech analysis using artificial intelligence a very long time ago. I have spent after around 20 years in the corporate world in different roles, from analyst to middle manager, and then finally director, senior manager, in charge of team of analytics, mainly in marketing and customer intelligence. And I have voluntarily decided to leave the corporate world 5 years ago to go back to my first love, which were academics, teaching, and trying to transmit what I have learned during all of these years.
Okay, that's quite a career track already. Why have you made the switch from the industry world to academics? You said it's your first love. What do you like more about teaching than the industry?
In fact, when I was still in the corporate world, I was particularly enthusiastic about developing new data-driven strategy, doing some R&D, but also developing talents.
Yeah.
And I've seen also in many situations that we need more people skilled in analytics in many companies.
Yeah.
And so the idea has been to go back and to be part of that big journey. Cool. To have more people in the business world aware enough about what analytics can bring as added value. Cool.
So, well, that brings you in your role as professor here at Solvay Business School. Can you explain what that means for people listening who have no idea what Solvay Business School is or what it means to be a professor? So from scratch, what does your day-to-day look like? What is the value you bring to the organization?
Okay, so Solvay Brussels School, it's one of the business school in Belgium, French speaker, but also in master English. All the courses are in English. This is a bachelor and master degree which prepare a lot of young grads to a world of changes, also a world of using more digital and business related data activities, and giving them, I would say, a broad background in management and or economics, depending on the program they would choose.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
The idea is also, as a professor of data science, to bring a topic like that to all our master program now, and to have more and more people equipped with business insight and business knowledge, but also being really aware of all of these new technologies, data-driven activities can really create value for the future place they will work.
Indeed, because that world is moving quite fast, right? How long have you been a professor here now?
I think it's the 5th year.
All right, cool.
And we have seen already a lot of changes in 5 years, in the sense of now we have mandatory courses of data science in each program.
Yeah. So you in your view, the company of the future, they will have to be equipped with data scientists to win from competition? Or how do you look at that?
I think that there are different challenges for companies in the future and already today, which means surely there is a technological challenge. There is surely a people challenge in the sense of having more expert data scientists, data engineer on board. But there is surely another big challenge to have more business related people who won't be necessarily the experts, but who would be, I would say, aware enough about how this new way of looking at the business is crucial for the future. So we need more business people who can understand, who can interact with the expert, and who has a clear view of what all of these new technologies, new way of looking at things through data is, what kind of possibilities it creates.
Yeah. Because I can imagine also from my own experience, indeed, I'm often seen as the expert, like the engineer on the other side of the equation. And indeed, sometimes we're really struggling with, if I have to report to C-level or to marketing directors or something like that, it's indeed exactly as you say. It's very hard for me, like the world I live in of code and IT and algorithms, to translate that to what a marketing manager needs. There's a big gap there, right? And that's probably something you also experienced before you were a professor. And is that also where you try to train your students in becoming more of this analytical translators, or where do you think the focus should be there? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, first of all, yes, indeed. The idea was when I was in the corporate world, one of the biggest surprise was that the challenge was not so much in the technology aspect or in the pure technical aspect, but what would make a difference when you are in charge of a team of experts in analytics in a company have been more this capability to show the real added value that this expert can create and make it actionable and create a source of creation of value for the end user and decision maker. So the communication aspect among all of the other aspects of technological aspect, pure technical, quant, etc. are surely necessary condition of success, but not sufficient.
Yeah.
And the role of being able to make the link between this expertise and the person who can benefit from the results, it's sometimes a real big challenge.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I remember we've done a project in the past where I think we delivered quite a cool model to predict customer satisfaction based on some very technical parameters. But then in the end, and that's maybe also our mistake, but the model never got adopted by business. So they never used the predictions we made. And it's frustrating from both sides, right? Because business spends a lot of money on us. And then in the end, you might have the best model somewhere in your database systems. But if you're not using it, you're not getting any return on investment from that. But also from our side, from the engineering and data science side, it's quite frustrating. You spend quite a lot of time building something, and then you never see it being used. You just see it being shelved. It's a real thing in business. And I think people indeed underestimate how often that sometimes can happen, right? How quickly things can get lost in translation between the two. Yeah, absolutely. So do you see some you already mentioned it's not just technology or technical, because indeed I agree with you, there are definitely technology challenges, but they're solvable, right? There's like, we don't have enough compute power. What are the options? Like, okay, there's three options. I recommend to go for option 2, and you can solve that problem. But the culture and people problem is very often deeper than that, and you can't just solve it with a simple PowerPoint like, hey, we need to work more closely together and then everything will happen, right? It's a much harder problem to solve, I guess. And maybe there, can you share from experience, like the things that you've seen going wrong in the past there? Maybe a concrete example of where you saw these things going lost in translation, and what you would recommend doing to solve that problem. Yeah.
Yes, I have seen different situations like that. So an island of data scientists developing very amazing intellectual products, but a bit isolated on
typical.
the island, which means not creating a real value chain for the company.
Yeah.
And this was it was a very frequent observation, unfortunately, in different environments, that we need to really build some transversal value chain,
Yeah.
which means putting together different competencies from the business we would like, or the business question we would like to tackle, until the delivery and the concrete deployment of the results. And in the meantime, a lot of more technical activities of acquiring the data, preparing them, modeling them, interpreting, etc. So it means the story is a very transversal one, where a different number of stakeholders coming from different worlds are supposed to interact to each other, understanding each other, and being all together a part of the final value chain.
Yeah.
And this is key, and this is probably one of the biggest challenges, and since today, I would
absolutely.
I imagine.
And to be honest, it's quite obvious when you say it like that. Like, of course, you need to think about the entire value chain and what you do with it. But I definitely see the same. What I often see is a company, like, we need to do data science. So now the new buzzword is AI. We need to do AI. So what they do is they create a lab environment, and in that lab environment you have a bunch of data scientists playing around for 2 years. And after 2 years, they go like, wait, why are we putting money in this thing? What's coming out? Well, nothing is really coming out. Well, of course not. Did you think about what you would do with the outcome of what the data scientists would do? And do they have to dream up their own requirements, or do they get to interact with business? And yeah, it's something I've seen in the past as well. And typically for large companies, they sometimes can spend a lot of budget on this. But sooner or later, somebody will get nervous, right? Sooner or later, somebody will say, like, look, we spent already $2 million on this, there's nothing coming out. So let's have and it's always a painful process. So it's also my recommendation when we go to clients, it's if you just want to do big data for the purpose of big data, then probably it's a bad idea. I am interested in which business problems you want to solve and how this relates to what big data can bring you to solve that problem. But if it's just big data for the sake of it, then the likelihood of failing is quite high, right? And
and that I have also observed many times that a step which is sometimes underestimated is the challenging. The technical people should challenge more the business people who have this idea of tackling such problem or the other one, and spending more time before starting any concrete analysis to challenge more the person who is the requester, to be sure then the request is crystal clear, and that at the end of the process there is an insurance of deployment and actionability if the results of the analysis and of the prototyping phase are really positive. And doing, as you mentioned, I fully agree with you, just doing analytics for the beauty of it, it's probably very challenging intellectually at the moment, but on the long term it does not create really added value for companies. And at the end it is how and why we will continue to receive budget as analysts to develop more things. So we need to have at the end an ROI of this activity.
Absolutely.
And if we are not able with small proof of concept to show this potential future value, more and more people, decision maker would be a little bit reluctant to put money.
As they should, right? As they
which
should.
Is
They much rather keep the money on the bank and get a little bit of interest on that, right? It's better than just throwing it in a black hole somewhere. So you already shared there, like you need analytics translators to bridge the gap between the two worlds. You also mentioned that the technical people should push back sometimes a bit more. I also noticed that maybe if that's something that you also perceived, but very often if you talk to business, if you want to know like what do they want, very often it's not clear what they actually want. Like it's very often we need to do better here, but it's very vague. Like we need better predictions here, but then what? And how do you want to make the predictions? And just that journey of aligning with business, like this is the outcome we're aiming for. Will we like a client asked us once, can you guarantee that your algorithm will be perfect within 5 or 10%? Like you can never know that up front, right? But that's the kind of let's say, expectations they have. Like a few geniuses will come in and they will make perfect predictions all the time. No, that's not how it goes. So it's a lot of educating the business as well. Like, what is the outcome that you would be happy with? How will you measure that outcome? And then iteratively you go towards that outcome. But then sometimes, of course, because also for us it's a client relationship. You can't always promise the client like for sure we're gonna get there, right? Is that something you've seen as well in your experience when you talk to especially big companies? Because that's my experience, that they have a lot of inflated expectations, right? Like we just throw all of the data in a big bag box and everything will be perfect on the other side, right?
Yeah, I see that too. And this is also why on an education perspective, and I would say on an executive education perspective, the idea would have more training for managers in companies to also help them to create the mental view of analytics development, which means having a clear view of what they could expect and what could be also the reality of the deliveries they can benefit from, which means that this is great to have a lot of technology, but as you mentioned, what are the real things you can count on as a decision maker when this job has been done on the right way? Yeah,
exactly. And how do you typically approach that? So if I'm a manager or an executive at a large company, would you recommend me to work with my peers within my company and do training internally with some external help? Or would you advise me to do classroom training where I can learn from other companies? Or what is the best approach there?
I would say that for me, two main aspects are important. First of all, if you come from the same company, it could be great to have people coming from the business side of your company, the IT, and for the analytical one together. So recreating this kind of embryonic value chain by putting the people who are supposed to participate to the same value chain together. So this, I would say, capitalizing on this functional cross-fertilization.
Absolutely.
In addition to that, approaching the same problem with the eyes of different industries could be also interesting. So typically, if we think about a problem like the prediction of churn, which is a very well-known problem in telcos since a long time, but churn is also a problem for all these different business, from retail to banking to energy, etc. So it is also interesting to have a same problem to tackle, where data can play an interesting and important role to solve it, and see how from the eyes and from the lens of different industries and the different constraints in each of them, how the same question can be approached very differently. So leveraging also this cross-industry, cross-fertilization.
But I think it's two very important things you just said there. The one is that just within the company, bringing the different functions together, like a business unit manager and an IT specialist and a data scientist, it might seem obvious because you work for the same company, just have lunch together and discuss. But that's not trivial, right? Very often where you meet in the hierarchy of the company is at the CEO level, because then it's the CMO here and the marketing manager is somewhere below the CMO, and then all your IT stuff are behind the CIO, maybe your data scientists report to the CFO. And so I do think exactly one of the struggles of a lot of companies is that there's not enough interaction between these departments. And I think that's indeed cool. I've witnessed some of your programs that within a company you bring these different profiles together, and just even if there's nobody else in the room, just that interaction is already super cool. So that's one aspect. And then, as you said, indeed, like everybody wants to reduce churn, right? There's not a single company that I've met that said I don't care about. Everybody cares about churn. So there's a lot of common problems that you can reuse across industries, and there you can, if you're in banking, you can definitely learn from a telco. If you're a car manufacturer, you can definitely learn from a retailer. And so also that fertilization is super important, absolutely. And is this something that you would say you do a crash course of a day, or this is a journey where we're going to guide you for an entire year, or what is the best approach there if you guide these people?
I think depending on the time you would like to invest in, we have an approach that works pretty well so far, which means 9 months of distillating a little bit different part of the multidisciplinary aspect of data science. So providing some content on the technical aspect, on the quant aspect, on the business application, and the way also you create projects like that, and see how you can create some own awareness of how you can use such knowledge in your respective environment. And the idea, what is very important, is in addition to the lectures giving some material to start, to encourage a maximum of learning by doing.
Yeah, super important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So cases, practicing, putting the hand in the machine, trying to code, seeing how is it sometimes challenging, which help also to really ground what is the challenge.
Because slides can only bring you this far, right? The slides give you a good overview, but if you really want to have a deep understanding, like getting your hands dirty is definitely something I would recommend as well. If you look at the journey that your students typically go through, so both business and IT and data science students, is there some aspect that you see coming back that they're typically always struggling with? What are they struggling with more than others? Are there patterns there?
I would say be aligned on, be sufficiently aligned with the same jargon to be sure that they are listening to each other. Also not being too stuck quickly in technology and using the technology as an enabler but not as an end by itself.
Absolutely.
And also I would say never forget the real objective and keep in mind that the why of this activity, the why of this investment, just to be sure that at the end we will deliver value.
Yeah, cool. All right. Maybe that brings us to let's say the future of data and data analytics. So you have kind of a privileged view because you have quite a lot of experience in the industry already. Now as a professor you meet a lot of different companies and a lot of different profiles. Where do you think we're heading in terms of data and data analytics? What do you see as new developments and how will the landscape look different 5 to 10 years from now than it looks today?
I would say it will be more a hope than something else. I would hope that we will have more development in the organizational part of analytics, which means I'm sure then we will continue to have a lot of technology, more and more data, but that we will have, I would say, some new way of putting in practice or orchestrating all of these enablers together, which means seeing more data culture starting to be put in place and really working. Also reflecting on more profile that we have to hide, but also how we can also, I would say, leverage the existing person in the different companies and give them the sufficient training and education to find ways to involve them in the future in all of this transformation. And also, which is probably a very big challenge, cultivating more evidence-based decision-making, which means using more data. Each time it would be possible. I didn't say that the idea is not to decide anymore based on experience and intuition, but bringing more data systematically in the decision-making process and trying to see where also we can have some more data automated decision which are potentially simple decision to take where human could focus themselves on where they can bring real added value and continue to bring added value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I especially what you said in the end there is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be either we are completely data driven and we are mindless mindless robots that just execute what the model brings, or we're completely working from our stomach, our gut feeling. No, it can be both, definitely. And where it shines best is that for the most boring tasks, let a machine do the boring tasks, let the machine do the boring predictions, and use all your brain power to do the very cutting edge, intuitive, creative thinking that you need now. Like, I don't even know what my business will look like 3 months or 5 or 1 year from now. Have your brightest people work on that instead of simple, let's say, simple churn prediction. I don't want to diminish that, but at some point it becomes like a typical churn management program. Once that's set up, it should be 80% automated and 20% should be human expertise. 80% should be robots, right? Or whatever you want to call it, machine learning algorithms, AI. Maybe related to that, and I don't know if there's one true question, but one true answer. But one thing I always wondered is, if you're a large organization, does it make sense to centralize all your data science and data engineering capabilities, or does it make sense to decentralize it completely, or is the answer somewhere in the middle? What do you think this is going towards?
I would say, for me, it depends on the level of maturity.
Okay.
And when you start to develop a capability like that, probably it could be great to have first a very centralized way to create this community of experts, creating also the stakeholder management with the different players in that new ecosystem, and to start to build a kind of a trust aspect related to support a competence like that.
Yeah.
But when the maturity start to become more and more important, the idea is to be able to deploy this person a maximum in the different places where they can create value. But for that, they need to have a strong competencies in the analytics and have started to build trust with the different stakeholders.
Yeah.
And then after, yes, surely decentralizing them, because this is a domain where it's not just about the technical aspect alone.
No.
It's about a permanent interaction with the domain knowledge experts. And if you are near to these people, the symbiosis would be probably definitely
Absolutely.
better.
Absolutely. And so if you see how companies are evolving now, how do you think education can help them to be better prepared in the future? Well, you mentioned a few things already, but what do you think is the role of education to help prepare, let's say, Belgian companies for this more data-centric future?
To have more people aware,
yeah,
a little bit everywhere in the organization, and not just the boardroom who can be trained about that, or just the team who have the expert guys on board. But we need more hub in the organization. If the organization can be seen as a network of conversation, we need more hub people spread everywhere in the different places within the company to, I would say, relay this way of thinking. And for that we need to have more middle manager experts in different domains which can have a different view on that. And it's important that we could find this type of people more frequently and a bit everywhere in the organization, because challenge can be in the finance, can be in marketing, can be in risk, can be in facilities, and this is always important to have some people who have this combination of domain knowledge and this capability to think more analytically everywhere in the company.
That makes a lot of sense indeed. Okay, cool. Thanks for the insight. So we talked a bit about the future. Now also let's look back in your career. In hindsight, are there lessons learned for you? Are there things that, knowing what you know today, you would have approached differently 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
I would say I have changed many times from one company to another, looking for new challenges.
Yeah.
And with the experience I have now, probably in some cases at the moment of recruitment, I would challenge more the interviewer or the people who would be interested to hire me on board, by being sure that all the basic condition of success would have been defined clearly before deciding.
Okay.
Which means there are some very specific questions that can help to create ourselves a kind of view of what could be the maturity of in analytics in that place.
Mm-hmm.
And if this question would have been asked more clearly and more formally, I would probably learn that in some place I would have accepted to work.
Yeah.
It would be better perhaps to do something else.
Yeah, no. Well, I can definitely relate because also my experience, well, before starting my own company, that some people can lie on their CV, but some companies can also lie in their interviews. They promise the world, they promise everything, and then the moment you start there, it's completely different. That's also why we work a lot with data engineers, and for them there's a lot more demand for data engineers than there is supply, right? So it's their market. If they come to interview with us, we ask them questions like how good are you, and we test them a bit, but they're testing us as well. Like I have 5 offers. Why would I join Data Minded, right? And I'm not doing a perfect job, of course, but I also always try to be as transparent as possible. Like we're not the next Google. We're not going to solve world hunger. This is what we do day to day. If this gets you excited, then please join. If this is not for you, then let's not waste each other's time, because you'll be frustrated 3 months from now, and nobody wins in the end, right?
Yeah, and in big company, one of the key factor is to be sure that we have on the boardroom one person who is, I would say, genetically convinced that analytics can change the world, and understand enough then it's now something has to be done, and that there is a room for innovation about that, but also to put in place new way of working and new way of deciding. And if you have a visionary guy in the boardroom about analytics, it really changes.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The choice.
But I guess you don't know that on your first interview, right? Would you recommend people just ask that, or how would you tackle that?
I would ask a few proxy questions just to give a first state. So just to understand where is analytics organized and how it is organized today. Yeah. And if the answer is it is in the IT department or it is in the finance department, I will probably try to start to have my alert system ringing a little bit. Yeah. Or when a question related to how data are organized, what type of data, how many months of historical do you have in your backup stuff, etc. How is it available, etc. Which are already some proxy about where is the maturity. Absolutely. Also, the way they have proposed the job description can be also very already illustrative of where this company is. And also a clear articulation about how analytics is part of the strategy of the future. Yeah. Or not.
Yeah. If they can't answer you that question, then you already have an indication that probably they're not there yet. Which you might also see as a challenge, right? You might be the person that brings them there, but it's going to be a uphill battle sometimes. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, it was very pleasant talking to you. Thanks for making the time for the interview, and best of luck in your future as a professor here at Solvay.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have this conversation together.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Martine.